Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Sanaya and I'm the founder of Braille Board Systems. Today, I'm excited to walk you through how we have combined smart software, computer vision, and audio dictation to completely change the assistive education experience for visually impaired users. So let's look at the problem. In our world today, 295 million people are affected by visual impairments. Out of these, 90% are children from low-income areas. Now, typing is an essential literacy skill, yet existing Braille tools are prohibitively expensive. The Braille board changes that. We offer a high-quality Braille-embossed keyboard with integrated audio software using a standard webcam. Here's a little bit about the behind the scenes of this entire process. So, Braille blind users currently, when they use their Braille keyboard, they are not able to receive the proper feedback. They're not able to hear what they're typing, and so if they're typing something incorrectly, they might not know immediately. Similarly, their hand placement on the keyboard is very important, so they might not be able to perfect that before they start typing, and that is why we have developed our Braille board software. So let's jump into the features. So our software tracks typing through computer vision. So using a standard webcam, we track a 21-point skeleton version of the user's hand. We specifically isolate landmark 8, which is known as the tip of the index finger, and tracking this single point locally with sub-10 millisecond processing, we are able to track each key the user presses in real time. Moving on to our AR feature. So our computer vision feature simply sees the fingers, but our AR system actively overlays digital rules over the physical keyboard. It creates an invisible or data-driven safety box over the user's keyboard. For example, if a child is typing and their hands drift 15% past the safety box margin, a guide voice will speak up and alert the user to move their hand right back to the home run position. Now, to prevent users from being overwhelmed with these constant alerts, we've also enabled this 4-second cooldown buffer, which keeps a gap between those notifications. Okay, so moving on to our A dictation. So when a key press is verified, our core audio engine processes text through 3 distinct layers. Our most important layer is our word layer, which is triggered by a spacebar, and it reads out every word the user types. For our beginners, we have our character layer, which reads aloud each character the user presses based on each keystroke. And finally, we have our sentence layer, which is for our more advanced users, and it's triggered by a punctuation mark, for example, the period, the exclamation mark, or the question mark, and it reads aloud each sentence the user presses or types. Learning should not be lonely, and that is exactly why we have developed the Leaderboard app and community platform, which engages our users and improves their literacy skills through gaming. And moving on to our financial projection, given our cost of goods sold price of $32 and our selling price of the Braille board of $99, we maintain a huge profit margin of 67%. And along with our monthly subscription for the community platform, which is $5, we're on track for a year 3 revenue goal of $2.5 million. So let's dive into the demo. I'll quickly stop sharing the screen. Hopefully you can see this properly. Okay, so this is my application on the browser. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So on the right, we have our dictation component, and on the left, we have our camera tracking software. So to start the dictation, I can enable either the letter, word, or sentence feature, or I can enable multiple at a time. So for this demo, I'm going to enable the word feature first. If I type in a word, for example, cat, and press the space bar, it would read aloud that word. Oh, sorry, the volume was off. Let me try this again. The D-O-G.
Dog.
Another example, I can do that again.
Rat.
Yeah. So this is how the word feature works. Now, if we want to read aloud each character, we can also enable the letters.
C. A. T. Cat.
Now we've noticed that each character of the word cat was read aloud as well as the entire word once a spacebar was pressed. And if we just engage with the sentence feature, we can type an entire sentence and it would be read aloud. So if I press the period, it would trigger the read aloud of the entire sentence.
Cat dog cat cat. My name is Sanaya.
Okay, so this was the dictation component of our application. Now let's move on to our camera tracking software. So I can start that component by clicking the active workspace tracking. So it turns on the camera, and the first thing it shows you is the safety box outline, which is our AR feature. We can
Looking too far left.
Oh, sorry.
okay, so we can change the size of our outline here. If I wanna, I think this size is the most comfortable. And once I show my hand, it shows neon indicators marking the 21 points on my hand. If I drift my hand past the safety box margins,
Drifting too far left.
it triggers a guide voice.
Hands too high. Return to home row.
So it tells me to move my hands back to the position which is correctly placed on the keyboard, or back to the home row. So that marks the end of my demo, and I'll just recap. So our dictation software, the primary purpose is to provide feedback for our blind users. So to ensure that they're typing correctly and they know what they're typing. They're aware of what key they're pressing and what word is being typed on the screen. Our second component is our camera tracking software to ensure that our blind users know where their keyboard space is and they're aware of their surroundings. So if their hand does drift, they can immediately go back to their starting position. And combining these two components, we have completely changed the learning experience for our blind users, making it much more easier for them to learn and continue to improve their literacy skills in the future. So thank you.
That is amazing, Sanaya. And I know you didn't mention that, but do you want to tell the judges a little bit of like what inspired you to do this, like observing
Yeah.
you?
Of course. So, one of my classmates I had during middle school, she was visually impaired and she did have severe blindness. So she had a lot of assistive Braille tools when she learned in our classroom. And they weren't small tools, they were pretty big. You know, you had a big computer, you had your packets and packets of Braille translated paper printed out. And she would pull the computer closer to her face so that she could correctly read the words. And I felt that that wasn't very efficient, especially in her learning and her school environment. So I wanted to develop this keyboard, which follows the same structure as a QWERTY keyboard, so she can work in different environments as well. But she also has that AI assist. So she knows what she's typing, and the dictation makes it much easier for her to receive feedback. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sanaya. Yeah, over to you, judges.
I just have a quick and probably not at all important question. Can you change the voice?
Yes, so that's probably one of our future, steps. For this prototype, I just had like the standard voice. It was loud, it's clear, I just used it. But I think it would be really fun, for students to, like record their voice too and hear it as the feedback. So yeah, that would be like a fun, engaging feature for this application.
Yeah, and I was thinking with, people, that speak multiple languages, maybe they might like different dialects or those types of things as well. So great
Yes,
job.
thank you.
Yamini, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a comment. I think generally me and Aisha, we actually worked in Microsoft for many years. And one of the proudest moments at all times was when we built accessibility features for Windows. Because, Microsoft always targeted a section of the audience that was ignored by most enterprises, most companies, right? And when Satya Nadella came in, one of the big things he would always, encourage is, hey, let's build accessibility, right? Because this is an audience we want to get to. And it's great that, you identified that opportunity, ahead of anybody else. This is amazing. I had two questions. One was, have you had your friend or, friends try this out? What sort of feedback have you received about this tech, about how to take this forward. I almost was expecting you to have that keyboard in place, by the way, given how advanced the demo was. I was almost, hoping
Oh
that you
yeah.
have that keyboard hardware in place.
Yeah, I actually had a 3D printed prototype. So it's obviously not working, but I would love to do that in the future. To answer your first question, so Jenny Mam's colleague, Mr. Hassan, he's in Istanbul right now, and I was able to speak to him about this idea. And so he gave me a lot of feedback on how the tracking software and hand gestures are heavily contributing to the improvement and learning experience of visually impaired users. So I was able to test it out with him, and he definitely had a lot of feedback, but he also had some encouragement on the hand gestures part of it and how the dictation is really helpful when learning. But
Fantastic.
Yeah, I did.
Uh,
Hi, how are you doing?
Go ahead. Yeah. Hey, Ruben.
So my question is, have you thought about how you might handle backspaces and how the person might be able to keep track of what word they're typing? Because I know like when I'm using a password and my password is hidden and I type like half my password and I forget where I am. It's really confusing to know where to start. So I'm just curious if you've thought about that a lot at all.
yeah, of course. I actually didn't show it in the demo, but I do have that backspace feature as well. So I'll just turn my screen over again. And let me just refresh. Yeah. Okay, so if I have like all three features enabled and I type like C-A-Z
Z.
on accident, I can just
Deleted Z.
backspace and it will tell me which character I backspace. And then I can type the correct one.
T. Cat.
And then all the features will work the same. But yeah.